In this video, I'm going to explain to you how this system sets up people to fail in terms of essentially creating a narrative, and this is the start of manufacturing a narrative to get you laid off. Now, what they do is they start picking out completely ridiculous points of your performance that they can't even justify themselves to put you under a state of anxiety that you might be laid off soon. This is how they build the narrative, because nothing's based in reality anymore. Everything's based on building a narrative to get you laid off, to do whatever they want to do with your employment and your income. So this is why you need to prepare ahead for this. If you pick up on some of the similar signs in this video at your workplace, you could be the next up for a layoff. Now, typically when a layoff is coming, if you look out for the signs, you can sense it, you can hear it from your manager's rhetoric. And typically your manager knows that job cuts are coming, that you might be someone who's not popular with senior management 6 months in advance. And then they build a narrative of negativity around you. So that's why you need to be aware and look out for those signals. So firstly, before we go through this example of a software engineer who is in this particular scenario,
I just had a one-on-one with my manager. Started off pretty good, but at the end of it, I am thinking that I might get fired soon. And the reason for that is that I'm a software engineer, and when we submit code, that apparently gets tracked, right? So we know this, but what I didn't know, according to my manager, is that we have something called an impact score. And I'm carrying a bottle of water because since hearing this, my mouth has been feeling pretty dry. And this impact score, my manager says he isn't really quite sure how it is calculated when I asked. So it's kind of worrying. The average of the team is somewhere where my number doesn't even come close. So the example that he used is the average of everybody's impact score is around 100 and mine was below 60. And I was like, all right, how is that calculated? He didn't really have an answer for that. So
first thing is, they'll come up with all these pointless metrics that could demonstrate you're not doing good quality work, or it could be completely pointless reasons. As I mentioned for myself, if you're new to the channel, I've worked at some of these top companies, Goldman's, Morgan Stanley, investment banking, sales and trading roles and things like that. They'll start putting in your performance reviews, oh, your emails are too long, you put too many bullet points in the emails, you should attach something to the email in a different format. Just completely ridiculous points. In his case, they have an impact score which measures, as a software engineer, how valuable his code is to a particular project, and his impact score rating is lower than others. And the manager themselves, as they'll mention, and a few other clips we'll look through, will be his manager doesn't quite understand how that impact score, that performance rating is calculated. So that kind of shows how pointless and irrelevant this impact score is, because it's just used as a gray area performance rating to effectively fire someone that the management might not like, or due to whatever reasons they have to make job cuts. So you should be careful for any BS reason about your performance. They just want to get rid of you, and maybe you should start looking for another job before they do lay you off, or you could wait until you do get laid off and get some kind of payment as a layoff package.
what I was thinking in my mind during that talk was like, okay, I've been doing all the work that has been given to me, and I've delivered on all of the work. So every ticket, because we distribute our works in tickets, every ticket that is given to me, I complete and I submit on time, but still my impact score is low. So that is something that it's kind of worrying, especially in the tech sector right now, where layoffs still happen. It's really tough to get a job. I'm on YouTube every day.
So this is a clear case where you can do all the right work, but it's still not good enough. Still, the companies can create completely made up performance metrics to get rid of you. Job losses are quite common in the industry right now, particularly with the job market for tech, finance, general corporate careers, because the economy is kind of being faked. It's all based on faked money printed out of thin air. And that's why it's important to have all those essentials on the side hustles, savings, investments. Figure out, based on your job contract, what the severance pay or the layoff package could be. Typically, it could be 1 month for each year you work there. They could have all these varying statistics that you can look at through your job contract, so look out for that and try and figure that out typically before you do join a company and when you could be looking to leave a company. Be aware of all the scenarios and financially how that could impact you if you are laid off through no fault of your own. So let's listen to another clip here.
Because I don't know how long I will have the job, and I think that's the worry for everybody who has a 9 to 5. But normal education, I mean, like everywhere, I feel like every country raises their citizens to become cogs in the machine, right? That's the same way for me. My parents, well, actually, my dad has always been an entrepreneur. It's just that growing up with the Western education, got brainwashed into thinking that employment was the only way to go. And it's only now where I thought about, all right, I need to make a business so I don't have to feel this way, because it's scary. I mean, like there's people who've been out of a job and they're running out of money, and I know they're in a worse situation than I am in. But I guess this is better than just having it sprung up on you when you come into work one day and they're like, yeah, you can't log in because you don't have a job anymore. In this sense, I kind of have some sort of preparation to the inevitable. I mean, my manager has told me that he doesn't believe in this impact score because, first of all, we don't know what are the factors that goes into it. And if you're in the same situation where, you do all the work, you deliver all the work that's given to you, but they still say that you're not making as big as an impact compared to everybody else. Well, my thought about that was that, all right, they're not giving me enough work, and that's a contributor to it. And that fault also lies on me, where I can also ask for more.
So what he's being essentially in a position where he's being set up to be laid off, right? And now he's thinking, this is what the system does. It makes it feel like, oh, you're at fault. You should ask for more work. Why should you have to ask for more work? If a company assigns you some work tasks, then you just do that. You shouldn't have to, I have to volunteer for more work. The system creates so many narratives to make you feel like you're the bad person, when maybe they just have another reason for making the job cut because there's a lack of profits for the company. You're not a favorite of management. So you just be aware of that and never feel like guilty about these things. Now, firstly, if you are in a position where you're looking at a layoff, you should think about how long that could be. You should be aware that could impact your mental health. And a lot of the mental health issues you see in the West right now is due to unstable jobs. In addition to the unstable and dysfunctional social dynamics, a lot of it comes down to unstable finances, right? In terms of 9 to 5s, lots of parents have brainwashed their kids to be cogs in these companies rather than be free people who might be self-employed. And that's why it's so important not to follow the conventional advice and do the opposite of that, whether it's having a side hustle or having your own self-employment. And if you're going through a long unemployment, how do you plan on sustaining that, right? Do you need to lower your living costs, lower your rental costs if you're living in a rental property, maybe set aside some of your hobbies if you maybe have for example, say you hire a personal trainer or you have some kind of video games and things like that, whatever costs maybe a significant amount of money for you on the side, and might want to reduce that while you do get your next job lined up. And the also thing is, the key lesson here is when you start a job, you should have the expectation of being in a difficult scenario, which is very common now, right? So when you start your job, you should think within 3 years, are you going to get a promotion, a significant promotion, a significant pay rise or bonus? Are you going to be dealing with a layoff, a difficult manager, difficult work, co-workers? What could happen within that 3-year period, right? So I would say within 3 years, you should always set 3 years as the benchmark. Now, as I say, if you are looking at that 3-year period, how would that work and how would you be detached from that company? The first year you would settle into the job, and I would recommend you don't go above and beyond. You do average work. You just show you're capable of doing the job. Don't do too much, otherwise you will burn out. So first year you do the average work. Second year you do good quality work, something that's just slightly above average. And in the last year you do great work if you've got the option of potential promotion, or you do good work again until you can find another job, or do low quality work if you want to quiet quit. Just always see things on a 3-year cycle. I know that's very unstable for a lot of people. People want that long-term stability, that they can stick with a job for 5 to 10 years. But a lot of times that just doesn't work these days, right? But also, again, you should also always look at that How much is the company benefiting you? Are they putting you up for a layoff? Then maybe you should just put in less effort anyway. Do you think you've got a realistic chance of a promotion or pay rise? Then maybe you should do more work. If not, you should look to leave, right? And I don't believe the manager in this scenario whatsoever. Managers never want to take personal accountability. Like I say, the corporate world is opposite of all the self-improvement narratives you hear about extreme ownership, radical transparency, self-accountability, blah. All these things are just buzzwords that make sense in your personal life or in your side hustle, in your own self-employment. But when it comes to these type of corporate roles, managers are always going to feign, oh, I didn't know that a layoff was coming up. Oh, I've just been notified that you're going to be laid off tomorrow. These are all complete lies. The manager's playing dumb. Don't believe your manager. They don't want you to hate them, so they'll just give you the narrative that they didn't know what was going on. I've been in situations where I've seen people are getting laid off because the company has job cuts, and then at the same time it's hiring a new person to do a very similar role who's a favorite of the management. So in what sense do you have to make those job cuts? You already got people who kind of do a very similar role. They could be slightly retrained to do the job slightly differently. But this is what you have with this system. It's full of lies. On one hand, they have low profits. They need to make job cuts. On the other hand, they've somehow got enough money to hire a new person to do a similar role as someone they just fired, right? So the key thing is not to believe your manager about layoffs and all the metrics and all the nonsense. End of the day, they're just looking to organize a layoff. And when it comes to budget cuts, I would highly question some of those things because, like I say, it sounds like he's being set up to fail. And if they're not giving you enough work, that's typically a red flag. If they're giving your work to other team members, that typically means they want to get rid of you because they don't like you for whatever reason. And also, if the other team members are doing fine and they don't have these issues about difficult management, it typically is a sign that management just don't like you and they just want to give preferential treatment to others. So the key point next is, if you are dealing with this situation, if you could be being set up for a layoff, you're dealing with anxiety about potential layoff maybe next year, how would you potentially deal with that, right? So in the next couple clips, we're going to go through a quick fire round of some useful advice of how to prepare 9 key tips for dealing with a layoff.
All right, now I have to get out of this apartment, which you see at the back here, because it's really expensive. $1,800 per month, which is expensive for Dallas. You see that apartment over there, right behind this big flag? Yeah, that apartment is, my friend lives over there and he has a 2-room for $1,600. He was renting 1 room for $1,300. This one is $1,800 for a 1-room.
So firstly, you would do is lower your living costs. In his case, he has an apartment that's kind of overpriced for the location he's in. So he's looking to move for a lower cost of living apartment. And I would kind of question why he didn't do that in the first place. Given he's got a friend who's living in a cheaper apartment, he should have kind of made that transition a bit earlier. That's something I definitely recommend. Just keep your living costs low. You never know when these situations can arise, especially these days.
I feel like everything is going to be good up until the presidential election, and after that, I'm not sure what's going to happen.
So first thing you should notice here, this is the second point here actually, this system is completely fake, right? So the social instability that could kick off, the economic instability that could kick off, this system can, through its financial manipulation, put things on hold. So the big recession that could come, even bigger layoffs and unemployment, things like that, this system can kind of hold it off until after the election in America. Even globally, this could be the same rules, right? So social instability, this kind of fake rigged economy that could implode after the election, all of those things are possible, right? And you should be aware of all this social instability that could occur. You don't have to waste your time watching the news all the time, but being aware of how that could impact how companies are operating, right? Whether it's encouraging you to work from home due to riots in the streets, for example, or it could be due to companies making job cuts after maybe an election goes one way or the other and it's not the candidate they favored. It could impact their business model depending on higher taxes or certain locations being preferred over the other. So the social instability or the instability in jobs could get worse after the election. So even though you shouldn't be too focused on politics, just be aware of how that can impact you, right? But at the end of the day, politics, presidents, they can't save you. A president can't stop this CBC, which is the central banking cartel, which is essentially putting you in a position where you have to earn money that is becoming incredibly worthless over time. You should essentially focus on increasing your income, staying safe, staying inside, avoiding the crazy people who are ready to snap due to the political instability. particularly on public transport when you're going to and from your job or your job interviews, if you're dealing with a layoff. Just be conscious of the social environment you're in.
Talk with him, and I was like, hey, how's work? And his answer was, yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure I'm gonna be around here in this neighborhood anymore. And I asked why. Well, he said, well, because I lost my job last month and they gave me only like 1 month of severance. So I think severance is really up to the employer, which is a risk here. So instead of 8 months, I might get just 1 month or maybe less than that of severance, which is gonna be a lot more stressful. He's very stressed. Well, no, he's not really that stressed out. He's just literally like, he's happy, but he's like, yeah, man, I need to do something because I'm running out of money. So that's the reason that he might have to move out of this neighborhood. It'll suck, but you know, the difference between him and I is that he is 50-55 and right now I'm 32. That means that I can bounce back ideally and get another job. Because I do think that there is a bias against people who are older, who are nearing their seniors. I mean, like when you're 50 or 55 and you get laid off, and I feel for them, but you know.
Number 3 is age does matter. There is ageism in the workplace. They want to hire someone younger they can get for a cheaper salary than someone who's older. That's why it's so important in your 20s and 30s to be setting yourself up financially through low living costs, savings, investments, and so on, that you can be set up for the long term, because it'll be much more difficult to find a new job in your late 40s, early 50s than in your younger years. Now, point number 4 I want to make is around severance package. That's why I recommend you should really look at your severance package or what that could be based on your job contract. I know it could change in the layoff discussions, but just be aware, okay, is it roughly going to be 1 month of salary, 8 months if you work there for 8 years? How much leverage does the employer have over you? Is the income that you could get capped at a certain amount? So you might think, oh, in my job contract it says I'll get 1 month's salary for every month I work there, but in some cases that might be capped at a certain level. So yeah, it's 1 month's salary, but it's capped at $20,000, $30,000. So even if you work there for 8 years and maybe they would owe you 8 months salary, maybe they would owe you, for just hypothetical, 100 grand, but they might go, well, actually we have some small print in this layoff package if you want to agree to it. You'd only get 3 months salary because we don't want to pay more than, say, for example, $20,000, because after that it hits a tax threshold. The company has to make some kind of disclosures to the tax authorities in the country. I've seen that in the UK where they cap it at 20 or 30k because they don't want to deal with the whole inland revenue and the tax regulation around giving a larger severance package, because then it can incur tax instances and things like that. So really think carefully about what package you could be getting if you are laid off from a company potentially next year as the layoffs continue.
I need to build my own thing, and that own thing needs to succeed. That is the least riskiest option, because think about it, if you're 55 and you lose your job because you're working on your job for the last 20 years and your company will not give two craps about firing you, laying you off in order to save money, to save their own skin, then you got to change your mindset. And that's something that I came into a realization way too late. And there's
So that's another point, right? Point number 5, you need to build your own thing, whatever it is. And unfortunately, I know people want, you make sense, you want your free time. You don't want to spend all your free time focused on a side hustle, and then you got to work your main job, then you got to do your meal prep, your focus on your health and your fitness and things like that. You have to juggle all these things in these typical ridiculous scenarios that people are in. But it makes sense to build your own thing and keep pushing until something does work. And that inevitably takes up all your time, as times you would have spent on hobbies or socializing and things like that. So just plan ahead for that scenario.
But after seeing how society really are screwing the little man, that they are only solving your illnesses for the short term and not for the long term to make money, and that's kind of like the reason that he quit, you got to think about the same thing, because I am in the same situation. I'm working in education, and I don't really believe in colleges and universities yet anymore. I think they're all just there to scam young people out of money when they are not financially literate.
So here we go, right? Now this is point 6. The system is a rigged game. It is very biased against you. It's always lying to you. And you've seen many videos that from what I've covered. I've worked in the finance sector for over 10 years. He's worked in tech. There's another video I covered you might see with if you look back at some of videos, maybe 10 or 20 videos ago, there was a Chinese guy who was working as a doctor in America. And if you see the thumbnail, it's the doctor and there's some mountain range in the background. He quit his neurosurgeon job because even though it was paying well, 500K a year, he was essentially realizing that the system's a lie, the health system, the big pharmaceutical companies are all a lie. And this guy working in tech and education in tech, which I'd assume might be a boot camp type of company that teaches people how to code and so on, is also kind of swindling people out of money, right? It's all one big scam to put you in debt, to just really take advantage of people. So what could you do in that scenario? Firstly, you should accept that truth is most of these companies are very manipulative and they're lying. And just accept it and adapt. And trying to fight it at your company or fighting the system and focusing on politics really is a kind of waste of your time. So what makes more sense for you to do is to really find out your one person escape plan, or the escape plan just for you and your family.
Wake up earlier because waking up has been tough, and I feel like when I wake up earlier I have more time to do deep work, to actually work on side hustles and businesses so that I can de-risk myself from the situation of not having a job.
So one quick thing he mentioned there is about waking up early. The truth is, when you're dealing with a layoff or the potential threat of a layoff at a company you're working at, you're probably dealing with a lot of level of depression or level of anxiety. So all the healthy habits, focusing on your health, healthy food, waking up and going to sleep on time, maintaining your routine, all of these things are quite important to de-risk yourself and fight that depression of being in a very unstable situation. So it sounds like a small thing, but it's very important to maintain those good habits. Otherwise you will get caught up in a depressive scenario, and that will make the job hunt even worse if you are dealing with a layoff.
Maybe I do a big reset and go do some blue collar jobs. So I was looking at like, all right, what's the highest blue collar jobs out there? And believe it or not, those guys that fixes elevators and escalators, they make the most bang for the buck. But the thing about blue collar jobs is that you can't be working on your side projects, or if you have some downtime, then you're just wasting that time, which is what I don't want to do. When you're working at a desk job, a white collar job, if you have some downtime, you can actually use that to maybe open up a book and study or something, or maybe work on your side hustles. But you can't really do that with the blue collar job.
So one thing I really want to just advise all of you, because lots of people see this kind of rhetoric that, you should go into a trade, learn how to become an electrician or a plumber and things like that. And they aren't necessarily bad jobs, but you should just think about it. How much time of that are you going to spend reskilling? If you're going to learn a new skill, will it take 1 to 2 years? Then will you start at low pay before you can become maybe a more senior qualified electrician, for example? How much time you're going to spend traveling to different locations compared to maybe a remote job where you can work from home. Because if you do a trade, you have to travel places and go and work on site. That might take 1 or 2 hours. And then that will tire you out. And if you've got to travel home 1 to 2 hours from whatever location that is in the country or your state, then that could, take time away from focusing on your side hustle. So sometimes when you're sold these ideas online, learn a trade, learn how to code, things like this. This guy's a coder from software engineering. Other people who work in trade say it's not what it's cracked up to be. Really think carefully about what could work for you, and each situation is unique, and that's why, link in description, I can provide you with direct career advice that is unique to your scenario. Now, the other points to mention here is around being physically tired after working that trade job. So how will you balance that with your side hustle if you decide to go from being a coder working in tech to working as a electrician, and then in the evening you want to have a side hustle? How realistic is that? Really think about your time and energy realistically so you don't get burnt out.
I don't want to use the word fear, but I'll just use the word fear for now, because that impact score, man, we don't even know what it is. And my manager was like, it's arbitrary, it doesn't tell the whole picture, but I know that there's going to be people who use it as a heuristic, who use it as a bias, that one factor is going to affect their whole judgment, and they'll be like, all right, Donald, you're out of a job because of this one impact score. That would really suck.
So as I explained, this type of ridiculous metrics that they use to justify whether to hire you or fire you, and that's the final point 9. sometimes, listen, he's had this discussion with his manager doesn't understand the metric that is showing a poor performance. He doesn't understand it. They still don't understand why. It creates all these mental health issues, imposter syndrome, feeling guilty about your work performance. This system deliberately wants you to feel guilty. It's a mind game. It's a psyop. So you don't pursue legal action against them in case of a layoff. They're building up the narrative. Oh, you're not doing so well. We don't feel too bad about it. I'm your manager. I'm not at fault. Maybe you're just not doing a good job. They have to feed you this narrative so they can fire you without feeling like you could be taking them to court for unfair treatment, right? So you just be aware of all these things, right? And you can always, if you go to HR or employee relations to defend yourself, they're just going to say anything you say to them in confidence, they're going to relay to the manager to further build a narrative to get rid of you. So just be aware of all these type of dynamics. So we've learned a lot of lessons from this person who's potentially caught up in a layoff scenario. I myself have dealt with layoffs in the past. I've worked at top banks for over 10 years, Goldman's, Morgan Stanley, and so on, investment banking, sales and trading, high pressure jobs like some of those tech jobs. And I offer detailed career advice to help you deal with these type of scenarios so you can maximize your freedom, maximize your independence from this collapsing system, particularly when the layoffs are high. And you could be dealing with layoff anxiety, thinking you could be up for a layoff next year. So just bear that in mind. So thanks for listening. There are 2 recommended videos on your screen right now. Let me know in the comments how you're dealing with the potential layoff scenarios that could be facing you. And I will see you in the next video.